Bad idea. Bad idea. Just like doing a whole dress covered in buttons. Bad idea. Hello. Hi, my name is Christy. Welcome back to my channel and to my husband's new recording studio, which is very orange. Very orange. I don't even need lights. That's how bright it is in here. Okay, so I added one light. There's a lot of light coming from this side, not so much from this side. Anyways, he did an amazing job. That's the good news. Bad news, I got COVID and have been secluded in our bedroom for the past several days. I don't know, they've run together. I don't even know how many days. I used that time so that I can try to come up with my next project. And I also got this new top from Amazon, my favorite place to shop. I thought I would make my next project a halter style dress or top. This is like one of the rare times I'm actually filming this before I've started. I have a bunch of buttons and a bunch of new fabric. So I thought I would make a button covered dress or top. We'll see what comes out. Stay tuned. Probably gonna be a huge pain in the butt and it's gonna take a long time to do. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like this video. If you're ready, I'm ready. Hopefully I'm testing negative soon and we'll be able to model this somewhere outside of my bedroom. I'm so tired of my bedroom. I wanna go outside. For this project, I have some old white fabric and some brand new shiny satiny black fabric, which happens to have a weird marking on it. I don't know. But anyways, I'll be using a little bit of black stretchy velvet for the neckline as well. Oh yeah, and a lot of buttons, of course. I decided to go with a dress, and this is how I'm hoping it's gonna turn out. Basically a button encrusted bodice that trails onto the skirt. And for that skirt, I will be patterning from this dress and then using the top I was wearing in the intro to pattern the bodice. I've marked with a pin where my waistline begins and will attempt to meld these two together. I folded the black satin fabric and the top in half and lined them both up on fold. I've already marked with pins the waistline and am now using my finger as an anchor to mark with pins the sides, armholes, and neckline. Using my seam gauge, I am now moving out the pins a ½ inch to allow for seam allowance. And thought differently for the sides since I wanted a little tighter of a fit up top and ended up moving the pins back to where they were without the seam allowance. Cut it out and the front bodice is done. Same thing for the back. Fold the fabric and the back of the top in half and line it up on fold. Pin around the edges, magically move the pins out to allow for seam allowance, except for the sides, and cut it out, except my giant fluffy blonde head blocks you from seeing some of that. Anyways, the back bodice is cut out. And the same idea for the skirt. Fold the fabric and the skirt in half and line it up on fold, pin around the waist and the edges, and I'm choosing to extend the bottom 6 inches following the curve of the bottom of the skirt. And then cut it out. This time, my blonde head didn't get in the way. You will need to cut out 2 of these. Pretty sure I just offended some culture by doing that gesture, so I'll go back to this one. 2. With right sides together, line up the sides and pin together to sew. I tried it on inside out, and to make the top fit better, I have added 2 bust line darts. Start sewing from the thicker end, and when you get about ½ inch from the thinner end, shorten your stitch length and stitch right off the edge. Then just tie 2 knots instead of back stitching. I've cut about 1.5 inches wide length of fabric to act as bias tape for the armhole. Line up the edges with right sides together and sew. This is what it looks like from the right side after sewn. Flip it over and trim down the seams, and sadly this black fabric does not really do a good job of showing this. But push the seams up and fold over to meet that edge, then fold down once again to hide all the raw edges and pin in place. Once the whole armhole is pinned, sew close to the edge. Similar concept for the keyhole back. Fold the fabric over twice, which gets a little tricky towards the V, pin in place and sew. The hardest part, well, before we get to the buttons, is the neckline. I've cut a piece of the velvet, the satin, and some iron-on interfacing. First iron the interfacing to the satin with the rough glue side to the wrong side of the satin. Then face the satin side to the velvet side and pin it in place on 3 sides. When you reach the 3rd side, I made a small black elastic loop that will fit inside the end of the loop towards the middle. Sew over that loop area a few times. Clip the corners and trim down the sides before turning it right side out, poking out the corners. Hopefully the loop will be in the correct place. I have ironed inwards both sides of the open end about 1/4 inch and pinned together. Mark the middle of the neckline and the front bodice, and carefully fit the bodice inside the neckline, making sure you start from the middle. Pin in place and then move on to fitting in the 2 back pieces. This was a lot harder than I wanted it to be, and I am really praying that it is going to line up. And if I'm being honest, I had to sew it a couple of times because it did not want to stay in there. Oh, damn it. Come on. I finally got it, and I'm not too worried about any imperfections on the neckline because it'll just be covered in buttons. With right sides together, line up and pin the 2 skirt pieces. And then grow longer arms so you can motion on the other side where to sew. To attach the top to the bottom, I've first finished off the raw edges of the skirt on my serger and then pinned the seams towards the back. Then you turn the bodice inside out and upside down to shimmy it down the skirts until the 2 raw edges meet with right sides together. Line up the seams and pin together. Pin together the middles on the front and the back, and then pin wherever else you want. Stay tuned for a fun threading error. This has never happened to me before. The thread got caught in that little slot thingy that holds the thread in place when you first buy it, and broke the thread. I filed down the sharp edge and finished the tediously long stretch stitch around the entire waistline to make sure it would still have some give. For the hem, you can either fold over the edge twice and sew along the edge, or do what I'm gonna do, which is finish the edge on the serger and fold it up once to sew. And that was the last pre-button step to finishing the dress, which means buttons are next. And yep, bought a 4th bag. I thought it'd be really cool to dump them all out for that shot, but turns out that was a huge mistake. Because now I have to sort through all of these. Some of them are gray, and there's black, big ones, medium ones, white ones, clear ones, and then a pile of misfits. This one's blue. Get it together, Amazon. Definitely should not have poured them all out. Finally got them sorted again, and am starting at the neckline to do 4 lines of white buttons down the front, going from small to bigger and then back down to small. With a few chalk marks as guidelines, I'm starting with the first white button. I purchased a button foot and I'm so glad I did because it's actually really cool and pretty helpful. The blue part is rubber, so when you slide the button underneath and put the presser foot down, the rubber keeps the button in place while you line up the holes with a stationary zigzag stitch. This took a little guess and check, but with the stitch length down to 0 and the stitch width between 3 and 3.5, I found it worked the best to just manually lift and lower the needle, making sure it did not hit the button and was going inside the holes each time. Once lined up, you can use the machine to do the work. and then lift and slightly slide the button up to do the same thing to the other pair of holes. So, I was originally painstakingly pulling each thread through to the other side and tying them until I realized that that was going to take forever to do that to every single button, and scrapped the idea and just opted for back tacking each button and praying that it stays in place. With the first buttons of each white row started, I occasionally found that I needed to readjust because of this, which was pretty easy to do just by shifting the button or playing with the stitch width. And sure enough, I have one furry white button row done. Then after the thread haircut, I've completed the second furry row. This really took a long time to do, and here, while I'm still towards the beginning of this project, it was all smiles and sunshine and kittens. That'll soon take a turn. Row 3 is complete, and then here comes the fourth and last white row. It's starting to look good after another thread haircut and a quick try on to make sure the rows were placed evenly. Moving on to the black buttons, I am starting with the very top and then going down the armholes and sides of the white buttons. One black button finished. Progress check. I started filling in a little up here and did all along the armholes. This is also gonna be the loudest dress. Middle black panel done, and I'm looking pretty, well, kind of happy. Trying to sew buttons every moment I can. I found it easiest when I had a plan and had as many buttons lined up so I could just go down the rows. Still mustering up a smile at this point, and totally killing it in my Christmas light pants while I fix some threading. 2 panels done, and the smile is starting to get a little sarcastic. Not as thrilled, not even paying attention. Really wishing it was less buttons. 3 panels down, just 2 sides to go. Feverishly sewing on these buttons, just wanting this to be over. Not even faking a smile anymore. This part was oddly satisfying, just clipping away the little joining threads. I don't know why, but this was one of my favorite parts. There's so many buttons! So tired of buttons. So's my dog. It does look kind of cool though. Very musical. At long last, I finally finish all the buttons up top and just need to do the trailing buttons down onto the skirt. Again, starting with the white button rows, I sewed them down as long as my drawing implied. Not sure why I was so happy that 1 button row was done, because I still had 3 other white button rows to do. Now I can celebrate that the last white button has been sewn. Another quick, satisfying thread haircut, and a hand stretch before I move on to the black rows. Again, I found that the plan worked best. Who knew? Having a plan worked well. As I got towards the bottom of the black rows, I tried to angle them out a little bit to the right. And literally all I have left is that little piece over to the right-hand side. And that was it. That was the very last button to be sewn. Thank God. And gave my sewing machine a well-deserved rest. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like this crazy video. Enjoy the final reveal. Oh, and by the way, 788 buttons were harmed in the making of this dress.